I know when I go back to that hometown, it's not the hometown anymore. My hometown is Jamestown. And when I saw the clip from 1941, I felt as good about that as I do about today. It just feels there's permanence here, good people that are always there for you all the time. I came as an English teacher, an English social studies teacher, always loved athletics, was certainly undersized and small, played at Union City, not a lot of success, but wanted to do something, but really didn't think, I felt it probably had passed me by. I went to Edinburgh. My dad died when I was 9 years old, and my mom raised just the 3 boys, and we didn't have the finances, so I drove back and forth, held a job, and did my student teaching at Corey, Pennsylvania. There was a counselor there by the name of A.K. Miller, and he lived out here right beside the golf course on Hunt Road, had the house right next to it. And he said, you ought to get out of Pennsylvania, go to New York State. Well, my frame of reference was always Erie as a large city. I'd never been to Jamestown in my life. And I came here in 1962. Bob Howe and Burdell Cotton were the administrators. And geez, I liked what I saw. They needed teachers. My fiance, who I would marry that summer, I said, this looks like a neat place. I said, I'd never been there. I said, it's just larger than Union City. It's bigger than Corey, and yet it seems small enough. It just looks like a great place to be. So we settled. The first year we lived out on Viewcoat in one of the cottages. And then we moved in, and lo and behold, as fate would have it, we moved to an apartment on Broadhead right next door to Mike and Lorraine Zangi. And found out that he was teaching at the same school that I did. His assistant at that time was Jim Conti. And Jim was a robust young man. He had played semi-pro ball, and Jim was getting very deep in the union movement. And he said, no, I'm getting out of this. And Mike said, well, would you help me? And I said, gosh, I really don't know. I said, really, I love baseball and basketball. But he says it doesn't. He said it pays $50 a year, but I said, well, I don't feel very adequate, but I'll help you, and that's how I got started. And I helped Mike for I think 2 years, and then Mike went down to the high school as a varsity assistant. Howie Wyquist was the athletic director, and they brought another coach into Lincoln School. In fact, they brought 2 coaches, and Howie said, well, we won't need you this year. We have 2 phys ed people, and we really like to keep phys ed people coaching, rather than classroom teachers. So I figured, well, that was a short career. That was, 2 years and out, but I think I got the taste of it. It seemed an awful lot of fun, a lot more than I thought it would be. Well, the next year, the program was a disaster. I think they won 1 game that year, and they beat St. James. That was their only win, and the 2 phys ed people said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with it. And Howie called me and says, I've got a young fella that we're hiring by the name of Pete Holford. He says has never played football, really doesn't know anything about it, but he's going to be the head coach. If you would like to come back and be his assistant and help him. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And so Pete and I worked there for the next dozen years, I guess about 7 or 8 years, and then he had had enough of it, and we became very good friends and still are, to this day. And I was happy there. Well, we had great teams. We won 25 games in a row, and I just loved it there. Shirt Hardenberg was the principal, and then he left, and I said, boy, this is just great. We'd play down at the stadium, and we had these big games against Washington, and there'd be several thousand people. And the varsity program, well, that was so far above me. I just couldn't, I didn't even aspire to it until Dick Noonan came to town, and we became friends, and I did some scouting for him, And he said, you know, you ought to consider coming down as an assistant. I said, I don't know, Dick. I said, I'm really happy here, and I got good friends that are. So I didn't do much about that until Joe Sanfilippo came. And if you remember Joe's first year, I think he won 1 ball game. And we were just right on the top of the crest then at Lincoln, and he came and introduced himself. He said, how about coming and be my assistant? I said, geez, I don't know, Joe. God, I'm awfully happy here, and I don't know as I can coach on the varsity level. Well, I stayed with Joe for 7 years, and then when he left, I became the head man, and I guess this will start my 16th year. And so that, just becoming a varsity assistant as an English teacher was, to me, unheard of. And then becoming the head coach. And by then the attitudes had begun to change. More and more academic teachers were becoming coaches. It seemed like the phys ed people were saying, you know, they were splitting that job. Phys ed people wanted to be phys ed people. That didn't mean they were coaches. And they were happy to work with the kids, but not necessarily go into the coaching. And we had people like Dutch Leonard was the basketball coach, and Veer Lindquist, and it seemed as though that, you know, Billy Rollinger was our swimming coach with a great record. And so then I became the head coach, and then 4 years ago, really quite, Kay Gould called me and said, I'm going to go to Maple Grove. You interested in being the athletic director? And I said, no. I said, I don't have that certificate to be the administrator. She said, well, we're going to split the job, just athletics. I thought, God, you know, to talk about a dream, you know, that's like, you know, do you want to go be in a candy store all day long? What better dream could you have than being with athletics and kids and sports programs? I said, God, I said, yeah, I would like to try that. So that's how I came. So, you know, I look back 36 years ago, I never assumed I would ever coach, and where your life takes you is remarkable. So each year the district gives me a leave of absence for my English job, and I have no, I you know, would not go back to that. It's just a matter of formality. But, you know, the question is, how long are you going to stay around? And when the district hired me, you know, they said, gee, you're going to be there 2 or 3 years anyway, because, you know, I know a lot of teachers today, 55 years old, and, you know, they're out the door and, you know, getting that full pension. And I just said, well, you know, for years I suffered from ulcerative colitis, and I was just really, it was really difficult for 20 years. And then 7 years ago I had surgery. I had my colon removed. I had an ileostomy, and it's been like a new lease on life. That's just been, you know, I referee basketball, you know, I'm active with the kids, I could run, and that has been just great. So, you know, I don't know, you know, when I'll quit. I feel a little bad because I have 3 great assistants. David Curry, Joe DeMeo, and Tommy Phillips, and any of those are head coach material, but they've been offered jobs, but they're really happy to stay at Jamestown High School. So today, it's a good thing I have those assistants, because I have to spread myself over the athletic department, and it's not a difficult job. I'll tell you, it's an easy job, because most of those people are good friends of mine. Once in a while, you know, I think maybe coaches are ego-driven. Most coaches have an ego, and sometimes, you know, the ego gets out of hand a little bit, and you got to rein it back in. And I have my 3 assistants, my wife, to do that for me. So that always helps. But we have certainly seen a change in athletics today. Looking at Joe McCoy, you saw the other day in the paper, Joe is getting his last 2 years paid at the University of Buffalo, and there's so many ways to get to college today, so many paid opportunities. You don't have to be a great super student. I think of some of the leaders in Jamestown that I have had in class, And in 7th and 8th grade, you know, you wouldn't give a plug nickel that they were going to get to 9th grade, because, you know, they were just frankly a pain in the backside. And today I look at these people, and they're all through our community and in jobs that are prestigious, in community leaders. So I found out, you know, you don't sell anyone short. And most kids, if you can give them a little lift up, they'll reward you and come back and repay it, you know, 100-fold. And here's Joe McCoy, who came from just a very, very poor background with no social skills at all. And he's have an opportunity as a young black man. And I think the black community needs role models. They need kids like the Joe McCoys. I just said today I met with Vince Davis. Vince and Nate Davis were two great football players in the 80s. One went to Cornell, the other went to Michigan on full rides. And today they're doing very well in the business community, but it's so good to see that. I think off the top of my head, from this championship team that was shown a few minutes ago, there were half a dozen players that should have excelled at the college level but didn't have the forbearance to do it. They got into the party mode, they got in difficulty with their grades, and, you know, one's working down here at this place or that place, and you know, I call them high school All-Americans that everything looks rosy, but they never have the drive or initiative or support to get to that next step. So, you know, when we get that, it's really gratifying. You're really happy. We have Truck Peterson, one of those success stories that's at Alfred University, and of course, you know, getting support of his dad and his mom and his uncle, grandfather, grandmother. You know, Truck is one of those kids that you know is going to be a success story. I talked to young Derek Dawson. He's down going to JCC, but he's down with Dawson Metal, and he's driven. You can tell that he's going to move into that business, and he's going probably be in the community. Says his dad is thinking of opening something maybe in Arizona and eventually turning the business over to the boys. And those are stories that you know, really make you feel good, and then you have the heartbreaks that you shake your head about. But today the NCAA has gotten into the picture of high school student athletes so much that you can't be a dunderhead any longer and not work in school and expect to get a scholarship at a four-year school. It's monitored so closely. What I mean by that, let's take Maceo Wolford. We all know Maceo. He's, you know, great basketball player, you know, maybe the best one we've ever seen for his size and a guard. Just a wonderful athlete, nice young man. Maceo's a junior. Now there's going to come a time where, and we get calls. I answered the phone the other day. Coach Marquette was on the phone, and that's, you know, he gets hundreds of calls. There'll come a time next year where, let's assume, let's say Marquette says, we're going to give you a full ride, full scholarship, everything paid. Well, the first thing has to be done with Maceo. We have to make sure he's taken 13 core courses. There's 13 courses the NCAA says you must take and pass. Now, obviously, if you wait till senior year, it's going to be too late. So everybody does their homework starting in 9th and 10th grade. The next thing is, what is his SAT score? How proficient is he? They have a sliding scale. If your average is 70 or 75, your SAT score has to be much higher. If you can get an average of 80, 85, you can come a little lower, but never lower than 820. That's the lowest it can be today. Now, they don't count, they don't really trust the high school or the college, so it goes to an independent group called the clearinghouse. And all that information is sent to the clearinghouse. School counselors send their information in, all the test scores, and the clearinghouse will come back and says, yes, he may accept a Division I scholarship, or no, he can accept a Division II scholarship, or he's not able to accept either scholarship, but he can enter a Division III school at his own expense. So next Tuesday, we will be given the spring physicals. And every young man that goes to take a physical, we've prepared a sheet, talks all about the NCAA requirements, shows all the core courses in Jamestown. He has to initial it, his parents have to initial it, they sign it on the bottom, and every time they take their physical for the new season, we're trying to get that message through. Don't wait. I had a mother in a year ago, and she said it's a school's fault. My son never knew about SATs. He didn't take them. It's a fault of the school. Well, you and I know that's ridiculous. I mean, the kid, just by word of mouth, would have heard that other kids were taking the test, but he was too lazy to take it. Well, the point is, we scrambled around and got him in some double courses and got him his SATs, and his score was 620. Well, 620 is terrible. Contrary, the mother is telling, you know, that the young man is a genius, and Christ, that he could only have that opportunity. But so let's assume we can't wash these kinds of kids out. The idea, then you encourage them into a junior college level, because once you're in a junior college level, if you can come out with your associate's degree, they forget all about the scores. The SAT score is null and void. So that's why we have Alfred State. Now, don't confuse it with Alfred University. Alfred State's across the street, but that's where Joe McCoy went. And now he's able to transfer. So that's one of the avenues we have. Right now I have Corey Itzen. Corey Itzen could have gone to Syracuse. They begged for Corey Itzen. He didn't have the scores. Chris Shaver, he couldn't qualify. He didn't have the scores. But they're both going into junior college programs. Corey, apparently, Merced out in California, the same place we sent Sean Bowman, this is where he says he has people out there, and we've talked to the coach a number of times. So there's a lot of ways to go. Of course, today you can enter the service, which I think is a wonderful opportunity for a lot of young men. I think it's a great character building. You still have kids that are not able to take direction. They don't want to be told anything. You know, they want to tell. And the Army is a good place to find out that there's somebody there that you'll learn how to be told. Some of them need that, to be told. You probably see them in the workplace. They have difficulty. They go from job to job to job because they always have problem with an employer who demands certain things. But today, the way the Army is, with the monies they give you, that's also an alternative. But I think the thing we preach as coaches and the athletic director, try to get yourself into something that everybody else can't do. It might be a tool and die maker. My son-in-law is a bricklayer and a mason. You know, it might be a carpenter, but don't count in today's age that you'll be able to go down like the old days to carborundum or TRW. Some will, but there's such a fluctuation in employment. You're probably going, first of all, be started at an entry level, and you may never reach the salary as the old-timers making $18 or $20 an hour. They've capped those salaries a long time ago. So that's kind of the message you know, we try to preach. And you know, I always thought my mother was the dumbest person in the world. And when I finally got to be 18 or 19 years old, I found out there was something going on. She was getting smarter and I was getting dumber. And by the time I was 30, I realized that I was the idiot and she was the genius. And, you know, we probably have gone through those, and young people today aren't any different. If your mother or father tells you something, they're a damn fool. Luckily, sometimes when the football coach says it, you know, they believe it, or the athletic director. So I'll take just a second and fill my mouth up here, and then I'll continue.
Still on that diet?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's why I got salad. 11 pounds. About 25 more and I'll be in business.
Just while Wally's eating here, what you saw earlier on the video is in 1941, it's an interesting story because we'll show bits and pieces of it. If you stick with this program long enough, you'll see a lot of this old stuff. But in 1941, camera crew came in, color movies. You just saw it.
Yeah,
Think about it. It's 1941 and that's in color. Hollywood, The Wizard of Oz.
You didn't have that recolored or anything. Wow, that's amazing.
It's in 1939. Just to put in perspective, The Wizard of Oz. Remember that was part black and white and then turned into color? That was a big deal. That's Hollywood. So here we are 2 years later in Jamestown, New York. What this guy did, he'd go to communities. It's a gimmick. And he would take crowd scenes. So he'd take scenes of downtown. He'd take scenes of people coming from church. He'd take scenes of Rotary, Kiwanis, anything where there was crowds. And you've seen, I think, the scene where we've done it down at the ballpark where Johnny Newman and Malevy, that 1941 team, which was the first year, that crowd scene and the ball players, etc. Well, what happened was, the gimmick was he'd do this in the community, and I don't know how many months he was here, but then he'd have the film, and he'd show it at the theater, and of course, everybody would go on the slight chance that they're on the big screen.
Oh my gosh.
Wonderful gimmick. Wonderful gimmick. So then what happened, he'd get done showing that, make his money, and then he left the print here in Jamestown, basically in the trash. George Samuelson, who did movie work and for years and years and years, kept it in its original format. And his sons, who I believe, one's John, was an attorney, who I know, and I think Bill's the other one. I don't want to say convince them, but of late, they've taken that because they know the film is becoming, the original is becoming frayed a little bit, and they turned it into a video for me. Wow. And I said, you know, I do some of this talking and throwing historical stuff is terrific. Well, anyways, I got it last week, and it runs for about a half an hour, and it shows a variety of scenes in Jamestown back in 1941, and includes, if you've been here, you see a theme when we have old baseball players here, asking them about Allen Park specifically. Asking them, explain to me, because I lived there in Allen Park, played on that ball field, but I still couldn't visualize 1940, the fences and stuff like this, and everybody kind of had different answers as to what Allen Park, how the park was laid out, etc. So wouldn't you know it, in this movie, and you'll see it sometime when you least expect it, is in fact a baseball game they filmed at Allen Park in 1941, showing the fences, showing people that so you'll know them, because it's a sort of a, I was going to say Muni League or whatever it was, but it was guys of my dad's friends. You'll see that, and there it is in the movie. It's like unbelievable fine. So we'll show that at some time. But anyways, this is the background of that 1941 movie, and I really hope that they run it, frankly, on Paragon Cable. It's the kind of thing that, just watching it, you're going to see folks, probably see yourselves, coming out of school. You know, they did Washington, they did Lincoln, they did Jefferson, the high school, churches, all those things. And you folks especially would recognize people and say, oh my gosh, there's the mayor. I think the mayor that we saw there, was that Leon Roberts?
Yes. Either him or Stroh.
Pardon?
It was Roberts there. Stroh.
No, that was Robert.
Roberts. So, anyways, that's the background behind the movie, and that's just a little piece of it today that dealt with a little bit of football. And Dead Moon, and Joe Sanfilippo was there, and Vince Joy, and incredible. That's out there.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's out there.
Yeah.
And that you found it.
Yeah. Along those same lines, we again we've shown it a couple times, but there was another movie taken, which is clearly a home movie. This guy who did this was a professional. But there was a home movie, but again in color, of the first game at College Stadium in '41.
Oh my gracious
I
sake.
mean, you say, oh,
Yeah.
there's a bit of film taken for the next 20 years, but there was one that first year because it was brand new, it was all exciting. Part of it's in black and white, part of it's in color, and there's Johnny Newman actually playing. So this is kind of fun stuff to unearth.
He never saw it play.
Pardon?
He never saw it play.
No, Jeff
What happened to the old football movies that they take in the high school games?
Oh, I'm going to tell you, Russ, that is a heartbreaker. And anything since I've come in, I have. Kay Gould took over Como Kane and had all that stuff thrown right out. It was in a huge closet, and she cleaned it out, and those old, well, let's see, what was it? That was 16 millimeter. And all thrown out. That was, yeah, right out the, and it's, because even back at Lincoln, when I was there, we took, I've kept all that, because every once in a while, some youngster who's not a youngster anymore wants to see some of that stuff.
Oh, dear.
Well, as far as football is concerned, certain that talent builds the coach. When you have great kids, in 93, 94, 95, we had great kids, and you know, just a lot of them, a lot of athletes, and we didn't have any injuries. Both years, we went through generally with the same starting lineup. Chad Pike broke his ankle in an inter-squad scrimmage. He missed one game, and then gave us. We were able to beat Sweet Home without him, and then he was able to come in and kind of limp around, but he showed a lot of heart. And those kids were unbelievable. If you said one day, Truck, step aside, we're going to put Johnny in there and give him a work. No, no way, no. Everybody was afraid if one like Lou Gehrig, once they stepped out, they would never get their job back. And they were so, everyone wanted to be on the kickoff team. They did not want to leave the field. It was the darndest thing you had ever seen. And, you know, where are we today? Well, the year after our 3 championship years, we were 6-3. Didn't have a lot of talent there. I thought my coaching staff did a wonderful job. Last year we had talent. We were 7-2, and I'm not happy with 7-2. That wasn't, you know, we let one get away from us in the playoffs, and I guess those are going to happen. You know, we won them like that, but it's funny, and it's good. 7-2 doesn't do it in Jamestown anymore. You know, most teams, I go to the ECIC meetings. I was there Monday, and I was talking to the coach from Lancaster, and he looks at me, he said, "Coach, we were 2-6 last year. We were 4-4 the year before. A year before that, I think they were 3-5 or something." He said, "Jesus, we'd give our heart for 7-2." But I said, well, I think maybe that's what kind of makes it unique, because we have the 3 midget teams in town that we work with, I work with. We try to speak at their banquets. We don't put our nose in their business. Help them out if they need a piece of equipment, a pad, a field. I arranged for Jefferson, well, let's see, at Southside, found a practice field last year. But we know that those kids are aspiring to be Red Raiders. Now, some of them will go on to be soccer players, and some will go on to be band members, but there will still be a nice little core that'll go into their junior highs. And we have Fred Natarelli does a wonderful job at Washington. Jefferson and Lincoln, the problem is both coaches do not teach in the building. And within the next couple of years, we should overcome that. But they've done a credible job not being in the building. You have to have hands-on with kids today, because I tell the coaches, you know, we're like salesmen. You know, if we don't hook them, something else will hook them. And the something else might be McDonald's, a job after school, or it might be just bumming around, or it might be Budweiser or Lucky Strike. Something will be out there to reach them. And I says, that's our job, to get hold of those kids and put that love of the game into them. And in Jamestown, we know what we do in the off season will pay rewards next August. So I can tell you today, those kids who will have a great shot to start. It's not an even playing field. When I went to school and you went to school, nobody lifted any weights. Nobody did agility drills. It was a rare breed that did that. Today, those who do are usually the ones that succeed the most. We have a powerlifting trip to Cleveland Hill on the 7th of March. We have another one to Sweet Home on the 21st of March. As we get into May, we'll start the Breakfast Club, where at 6:30 in the morning, we will bring our athletes into the gym and go from 6:30 to 10 after 7 and work on agilities, just quick feet. Today, it's the biggest thing. You can be so good. Every college coach wants to know how quick are their feet. So that term quick feet, their ability to move from X to Y as quickly as they can. And I know you've seen that, Randy, at Alfred. So we'll have the Breakfast Club, and at 10 after 7, we'll stop, send them in to get showered. We'll take them into the cafeteria, and the Booster Club will pay for their breakfast and get them up to class at 8 o'clock. Now, this will be something that, we do not require. We don't require them to be in the weight room. We don't require them. We encourage it. We cut nobody in the football program. I don't care whether you're the littlest peanut from junior high right through. If you want to be on a football team, you will be on the team. That's our policy, and we have made that a good, firm policy, and I think it's just great, because you end up with so many kids who maybe are undersized or too slow or too fat, or it's not always being too small. You can be too big also, and you just are not productive. So we keep all of those. The first week in June, we'll have our mini camp at Strider Field. 2 years ago, the state of New York changed all the rules. If you remember, Muddy, and I know you do so well, in the old days, once the season ended, you were all done till the first day of practice. Today, it's wide open. Basketball team, they're playing all year round. Baseball team can hit in a cage. So we'll go for a week at Strider Field, first week in June. Now, if you reflect back to this past season, our JV team did not do very well. And they didn't do very well because they didn't have much talent. That class, that 10th grade class, is a class that does not have a lot of football talent in it. Now, what we're doing is we've evaluated. We had a good 9th grade team. They were 7-1. And so we're going to take 6 sophomores this year and put them on the varsity. There's 2 big linemen, and then there's 4 skilled people, and they're coming right to the varsity with us. So we're going to try to step over that class that doesn't have a lot of talent in. There's half a dozen football players there, and then a half a dozen that might be if they work hard enough. So our mini camp in June. Then the next thing we'll have is 4 Saturdays in July. We'll have our Passing League, and we invite the county schools into that. Maple Grove, Faulkner, Southwestern, come in, Dunkirk, Frewsburg, and we put 2 teams in it. And all you do is pass the football. You touch the guy. It's great for your defensive backs, your quarterbacks, and your receivers. We do that Saturday morning. Takes us up to the 1st of August. And then the 1st of August, the Red Raiders will open our own camp at Strider Field, and we'll go from 6 to 8 the week before the season starts. And it's a skill and conditioning camp, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And again, none of this is mandatory. I mean, I'll have kids on the 18th of August will walk in that have never taken part in anything. And fine, maybe we'll find a nugget in the rough, who knows? Especially the skilled people. You might get a receiver or a running back that just has great natural talent. Probably not a lineman, but could be. So we do our camp the last week before we start, and then Monday the 17th of August at 8:30 in the morning until Labor Day, I'll keep the varsity, the JV, and the 9th grade all at Strider Field. I want those young kids to see how the varsity does it. Separated, we'll do a drill. We'll bring them down, say this is how we want the drill done. We'll show them about our tackling, but we'll be on one end in the end zone. 9th grade will be in the middle of the field. JVs will be in the other end zone coming out, and you can get all 3 teams there. And we keep them right there till Labor Day, and then we go, the 9th grade goes down to the Harrison Street field and JVs in behind the high school. So that's the way we've been able to work that program. Booster clubs have been very, very needful. We've needed booster clubs. We had our first meeting. We had a great year last year. We have a nice fund balance, but if you think about it, we will play 4 games on grass. Now, this, 4 or 5 years ago, the school got out of the shoe business. They don't want to provide the spikes anymore. Now, we ask a young man to pay for turf shoes, and I'll tell you, wear turf shoes at practice every day, the nubs will be worn just as smooth as that tabletop, so he'll want a pair for games. So then he can end up with a pair of grass spikes. So we try to get the booster club to buy all the grass spikes. So that's been an essential. Now, Strider Field, excuse me, we're just about ready to replace that surface. This will be our 9th year. They guaranteed it for 8. They said it'll be worn out at 10. And it's just about to the point. Now, with this capital project we'll be voting on this summer, and it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for Jamestown citizens to just renew our whole district. $31 million. If you've been in the high school, that building should stand another 200 years. But we've got to replace the plumbing, electricity, kind of give it a general update, just like you do with your home. Got to put a roof on. But the most wonderful story about it is the state is going to reimburse us 95 cents on every dollar. We're going to walk out of that $31 million or $33 million project, and our taxes aren't going to raise a penny. Now, I'm concerned about school taxes. I pay them. In my tax bill, I don't want it to raise. And that has been created in such a way that we're going to improve our schools. We're going to put a new surface on Strider Field, new track. Both are going to need it. And in the next couple years, we're going to have a place, I think, that can take us, well into the 21st century. We'll be, 2025 or 2030 or 2035 before another renovation is needed.
How about lights?
No, I don't think that'll happen. I don't want it, personally. I think several things. It's in a neighborhood, and I know from experience, North Tonawanda just took their football field in the neighborhood and moved it out because of the problems they were having. They've gone away from lights. We know today the youngster is a different type of youngster. We don't get the element of kids who don't know how to behave to afternoon games. But you give a night game, and in a city district, you're going to get the ranting and the raving and the drinking and running through people's yards. And I think on that condition, first of all, we shouldn't do it. I think Saturday afternoon is a wonderful time to play. I'm very happy to play. Most of the colleges play. It suits them fine. And one of the boards made a pledge that we would not have lights at Strider Field. Now, it's a new board, but to me that is a bond that you've given to the people, and I don't believe that it should be revoked. I'm not. I did last week. I went down to Pittsburgh, and I visited a turf company that has been in business about 20 years, and I really liked. This is a long artificial grass. It's about this long. Now, if you've been on Strider Field, you're talking about basically a carpet in your house. Well, this is about this long, and they take a mixture of a black sand and rubber, and they put 100 tons on top of that field, and they rake it into this carpet to give it the cushion. It's non-abrasive. You rub your hand like that on Strider Field, and you won't have any skin here. I dare say kids from the 94, 95 team still have scars on their arm. I'm certain that's true. This is a non-abrasive material, guaranteed the same. In fact, the replacement was a little bit less, about $500,000 to replace. and they can lay it over anything, but they want the same. I don't know if you know about Strider Field. There's 15 inches of limestone, and on that limestone there's 4 inches of pervious asphalt, a special asphalt that water goes right through. On top of that asphalt there's a rubber pad, and then you have your green carpet. Now this company would take out the rubber pad and throw it away and lay this on top of the asphalt. And the water, the same, falls right through, and you can't flood it. I really like the looks of it. There's a high school around Pittsburgh at Monongahela, Rheingold High School, that has it. And I'm going to make a trip down and visit that. He had a section at a clinic that they had brought in and dumped the stuff and raked it in. But I thought it was a little bit neater because it gave you the appearance of grass. About that, the stems were about that long. It was a polypropylene, and it was non-abrasive. It just you rubbed your hand on it, you could tell that you were able to, go down on it and not get injured. But do you have questions? I'm rambling on, and I don't know if there's
How about the 88 Striders? Don't they help out on the football team and the schoolwork?
Here's what's, you're talking about their tutoring program?
Yeah, I thought that's
oh, yeah.
important.
Oh, yeah, and it's very good. Because the thing of it is, Sam, you got to get them there. Now, Aaron Leeper, who's on our basketball team, failing math. And I called Aaron in. I said, Aaron, if I don't see a drastic improvement in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to pull you off the basketball team for the playoffs. His mother told me that he won't go to Striders. He's lazy. Goes to basketball practice. I'm sure he's tired. Striders is a couple evenings a week. So it has been a very effective program if you can get the kids there. And we do have a lot of kids there, and the grades perk up real well. So I think Striders are doing a nice job in that tutoring program.
Would you kick them off the team if their marks are good?
Oh, yes. Yeah, let me tell you a story. It was a month ago. Had a 9th grade basketball player, looked at his report card, failing 4 subjects. I called him in, and nice young man, little Swedish, tow-haired kid, as innocent as a blue-eyed. I said, how could you do this? I said, what is this? Now, his father is a big bushy beard. He's a biker. Now, I don't know how this ponytail, but I called the father on the phone. I said, I'm removing your son for the next 2 weeks. I said, I'm going to give him an opportunity to, I've got a sheet that they take around every day to their teacher to get his grades up. I said, are you aware that he's failing? Well, 2 were in the 60s, and 2 were outright failing. And the father said, well, I don't care anything about that. He loves basketball. I said, well, you're not hearing me. I said, he's not going past. And he said, basketball's his whole life. I said, well, I know academics aren't his life because I'm looking at his report card. I said, it's obvious. But he says, well, you're doing him a disservice. I don't agree with it. And I said, well, I'm telling you what I'm going to do, whether you agree with it or not. And the little guy has begun to pump him up. Got to 2 in the 60s, up to the 70s, has one of the failures wiped off, and now he's working on his math class. And he told me the kid would quit, he wouldn't come to school, he would give up. Well, it hasn't been true at all. Obviously, the young man has more sense than the father has, because he just needed a little prodding, and apparently he wasn't getting anything at home. And I was shocked, because most parents are very happy that you called. They'll work with you, but this was an exception, and I just didn't think they existed today.
Do most teachers work with you, Wally, to do this?
Very, very well. Especially, I'll call them on the phone. I said, Johnny has this, I have about 6 categories. They do their homework. What was their quiz score, if there was one given? What's their test score? Were they present today? What is their attitude? And all they have to do is quickly go, good, fair, poor, and it doesn't take probably 20 seconds to do it. And it's the young man has to take it up, and then at the end of the week they bring it in to me. Now, I found it to be really effective because they really are scared to death of me. You know, I don't want to say, I'm not bragging about it, and I don't, you know, but they don't want to come to that athletic office if they haven't done anything, and there's, you know, all these poor grades. So that has been a really effective way to do it. Well, as we near the end, you know, one of the things that we tell the football players that each and every coach on the football team loves you. We use that word very liberally. We say, you're wanted here, you're a special person. And we tell them, you know, if you tell somebody they're a jackass often enough, they're going to believe it. You know, if you tell them they're special, but we want you to act in a special way. That's why on the first day of football practice, I never want to see an earring in your ear and that's Saturday and Sunday. I said, I'm of that generation. I don't like earrings in men's ears. I want your hair to be cut in a respectable way, and today we've gone back to decent haircuts. And if you ever get suspended out of school, we drop you from the team immediately. So we expect you to be a leader within the school, expect you to do well in your classes, and being a Jamestown Red Raider football player is one of pride. I said, if you ever need something, you know, you call. If you ever need a place to stay, you can't believe how many parents throw kids out because there's anger and get out the door. And suddenly the young person, boys and girls alike. Now, I guess it's sexist, but having 3 daughters, I always think that, you know, you just don't throw a young lady. You know, a young man might, you know, get out and go live with a buddy, but I've seen them throw the young girls out, and I can't do anything about that because we don't have girls on the football team. But that seems to be a favorite trick today. You know, out the door they go. And we've taken kids in and, you know, let them stay for the night and, you know, try to patch that up at home. But I think being a Red Raider football player is something special. We want it to be, you know, you would think at a school the size of ours that you'd have hundreds of people. Well, we don't. We say everybody's invited, but there's obligations, there are commitments, certainly you have to act. And as long as the kids keep coming, you know, I think we'll be successful. And by record is not a full measure. I said one of the most rewarding teams we've ever had, we were 3-5 in 1985. Those kids gave of themselves. They worked as hard as they could. They were just a great bunch of kids. That's all the talent they had, is 3-5, and we probably didn't have the talent to win 3 games. And I know the 5 we lost was by a total of 20 points, so they were scratching all the time. So I don't feel worthy to be at the Hot Stove League. I'm a baseball fan. I love the game of baseball. I'm one of those, I'm a Detroit fan. I get WJR. I listen to every single game starting in the exhibition. My wife thinks I'm crazy. When I'm not home, I make her put it on a tape recorder. I love to listen to baseball. You know, I go to Lakeland every year during spring break. Spend there a couple days there. This year they're already gone because they play their first game the 31st of March. But last year, Mike Ferguson was kind enough to get me a couple tickets in Lakeland, and we sat down there, and gracious sakes, we were right by the dugout, and I felt like you know, the richest man in the world. The usher said, well, you're right in the VIP section, and there I sat, and that has always been my first love of baseball. So in a way, I'm kind of slipping in on the back door. The day Alan Trammell came here, it would have been worth $1,000 for me to sit in this room and listen to Alan Trammell. And you know, my Jamestown heroes are guys like Jack Fulford and Tom Sharp who've appeared here, so I know I can't, you know, stand with those people, but I really appreciate you asking me today.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Section 6, allow non-public schools into Section 6?
It will not happen unless it happens by court order, and I don't expect it to. We just can't get the, well, it doesn't affect us. But here you have Johnny, who lives next to Frontier, which is 3 miles from St. Francis. He goes down the road to St. Francis, and now he plays against Frontier. He may be a student who's failed every subject, but he gets into the parochial school and suddenly they have a scholarship, they have a program, they overlook everything, and it's just not the same level playing field. I'm Catholic, and I heard somebody call up one day and says, well, Huckno is anti-Catholic. No, I'm not anti-Catholic. But I believe we have the Levant Church School. That's a wonderful place. Bethel Baptist. That's great. You know, I think those are great educations. We have Holy Family here. And if you want to send your children there, you're doing a great thing. But you can't expect to have the same opportunities as the public school system and come into their programs. You know, let you know, St. Joe's play St. Francis and Bishop Timon, and I know those are great young men. Mayor Masiello, you know, he came from one of them, and all of the leaders in Buffalo. And maybe you and I, if we were in Buffalo, we'd be sending our children. I don't think I'd send my children to Grover Cleveland or Bennett or Burgard either. We'd probably send them to St. Joe's or Timon or St. Francis. But that's a very hot issue up there. Down here, it doesn't affect us much.
Are you in charge of the scheduling for the basketball team and stuff like that?
No.
I just wonder why they don't schedule, I see you schedule Warren twice this year.
Yeah,
You didn't schedule Southwestern.
No, we didn't schedule Southwestern. I'm going to be very candid with you. Here was the Southwestern story. I would have scheduled them. I didn't have to play them, of course. That's why. Ron Fredris would play them if they would come to our tournament. They wouldn't come to the tournament. They would play us on a home and home. So most athletic directors are not full-time. In Jamestown, I would say to Ron, I said, Ron, you're going to play Southwestern. Now, whether he liked it or didn't like it, he was going to play him. But Southwestern, having a part-time athletic director, they let their coach have complete run. Now, generally, I want to cooperate with the coach. I don't want to step on his feet. But I thought it would have been good for the Jamestown Southwestern area. Southwestern has a wonderful team. They have a nice ball club. They probably would have beaten us. So what? So what? You know, maybe they would, maybe they would. Right now, we're playing great. So maybe they, but regardless, people wanted to see that match. But both coaches got a little bit stubborn, and that's why we didn't play Southwestern. Now, I know Ron's nose was really bent a year ago when Southwestern beat him. Was it a year ago? Or I think it was a year ago. Yeah. We always say when you're an AA school, you have very little to gain by playing schools beneath it. If you remember when we used to play Dunkirk in football, we beat them almost every year. But there would then come a time where you lose them and everybody would say, geez, you can't even beat Dunkirk. And
1944, Faulkner beat Jamestown, 34-9.
Is that right? No. And you haven't forgot it since. Most of the schedule comes from Section 6, and then you have place to fill in your non-league games.
Well, why instead of having to play a home and home, why couldn't you get JCC and play 2 games down there? JCC and Southwestern to play 2 games down there. One team will be home, one. Because you're going to have 3,000 to 4,000 people that are going to go to that game.
Well, you don't have to convince me, but I don't think I frankly don't think Jamestown wanted to play him really as much as anything. I mean, if we did, we would have. You can call it any, but
yeah, I know.
So I think that's it. And if they had an athletic director where the 2 athletic directors could have got together and said, this is what we're going to do. Now, when we're in the ECIC, I call the guy from Sweet Home, and in fact, I have to do that today. I want to change a track meet. Well, in Chautauqua County, I said, let's change the track meet, so I'll have to go ask the coach. Jesus, you can be running around like a chicken with your head chopped off asking the coach. You look at the date, you have so with Sweet Home, I'll say, they're coming here the 14th of May. I want to change it because we have another event at Strider Field. he and I will take care of that. He'll give it to his coach. His coach isn't going to care. You know, he's 2 months away from May. So they play Jamestown on the 13th. But in Chautauqua County, where the athletic director has 5 classes, he might be a social studies teacher, and who's the most respected man out in the county school? Very often, you look at Frank Wasslink at Sherman. I mean, here's a man who was, you know, the most important guy at Sherman School. Now, I can't imagine the athletic director there telling Frank what they were going to do. It just wouldn't happen. So, you know, you have a different set of circumstances.
How'd you become a Detroit Tiger fan?
I was born in Detroit.
There you go.
Yeah, I lived there till I was 5 years old. All my aunts and uncles were there, Royal Oak and Clawson and Hamtramck. And we left Hamtramck, which is, I'm Polish, that's a Polish community. Then it was pretty much all lily white. Today I have an uncle there that he hasn't seen a white face in Hamtramck in, you know, 20 years. And he's just stubborn enough, he's staying right there. But that's how it was. In 1950, 1949, 1950, when Hal Newhouser was still pitching for the Tigers, WJR carried the night games. And I was 9 years old in 1949, and I would listen to him. We had a farm outside Union City, and that's how I first got hooked. And boy, we've had a lot of down years, but we've had a couple up years anyway. But so we follow all the Detroit teams, the Lions, Pistons, Red Wings, and my daughter is raising her boys the same way. He's 4 years old, and I call him, and he'll say, "Pop, go Wings." So she took him the other night to see the Wizards down in D.C. and Pistons. And he says, "Who are we rooting for?" She said, "The team in green, the Pistons." And he said, "Well, who's the other team?" And she said, "Well, that's the Wizards." He says, "Boo, Weasels." She said, "Robert, it's not the Weasel." "Yeah, it's the Weasels." So she kids her husband that it's the Washington Weasels.
What do you think about the Pistons firing Doug Collins?
Well, I see that as overpaid athletes who are crybabies. Doug Collins is a good man. They forget that a few years ago they only won, what, 14 games or something like that. They shoot terrible. They've needed a big man. Doug Collins rode them hard, and they didn't like it. Now they say they're much more relaxed. Well, I hope it turns into wins and losses, but I don't know. I don't have. Of course, the NBA. Don't get me started because I'm just not a fan of that. You know, overpaid people who don't think they have an image. You know, in the public eye, and I see just their recent stand on marijuana is not on one of the one of the drugs that they can be suspended for. So you can be arrested out in front of Madison Square Garden for smoking marijuana, but if you go sit in the locker room and smoke it, the NBA can't do anything to you about it. So that's just opinion.
Well, what's the size of the Jamestown High School athletic budget?
We will be, with transportation and salaries, everything included, less than, let's see, where are we now? 0.80. We will not reach 1% of the budget. We'll be about $250,000. Percentages.
Yes, the total amount.
About 250,000.
That's where you want to
But, and when I went to the board 2 years ago, we were making cuts, and I said, you know, we're less than 1%. Oh, no, you're 3 or 4%. I said, no, we're not. I said, counting all transportation, and for us that's expensive, $45,000 a year. It costs us $30,000 for officials, just officials, $30,000, and they negotiate the contract with Section 6, so you have all you do is write the check and pay it. You either pay it or you don't play. So I think we're doing really well for our dollar. I came out a couple years ago, and we were, out of all the schools, I think we were 42nd in spending per pupil athletically. And our boosters clubs have been a big factor in there, putting money in. Almost everyone has a booster club. So
do you have a feel for what that total input is, roughly?
I don't know that, Russ, because I think a lot of it, for example, the wrestling team went to the Kenton tournament last week, and I told the wrestling coach, I said, I had just paid for 2 tournaments. Spencerport was the last one, and I says, you've run out of money, Craig. He says, that's all right, the Booster Club will pay. They stayed overnight. It probably cost the Booster Club $1,000 for that weekend. And those kinds of things, I'm not even, I never aware of it, never get a report on. But I think that's good because it makes those people feel like they're a shareholder in the program. Whether it's our baseball program, Chris Riley said he was buying a new piece of equipment, Booster Club was paying for it. So I think that's a good idea.
Well, the football Booster Club budget is...
How big? Big.
It's the biggest, right?
Yeah. We'll run about $20,000 a year through that checkbook for the Football Boosters Club. And we require the youngsters to do something. It's not a take. And they will have tag days. They'll have some kind of fundraiser so that they have to get out and raise some of that money. I try to meet with each booster club and tell them that the way we run booster clubs is generally you raise the money and we'll coach the team. Don't put your money in coaching, your nose in the coaching, and we won't put our nose in the money. And that has been a pretty good, successful way in Jamestown, because you and I can pick up the paper today and see Booster Club in Texas, wants to do this, or they get out of hand, or they're given these kinds of gifts. So we've been able to control it, pretty well. I just had to tell a fellow the other day, he says, well, our plan in this particular sport, we're going to give the athlete $50. I said, no, you're not. Why not? I said, because it's illegal. I said, you can't pay high school athletes. He said, well, Jesus, we've done it before. I said, I don't even want to hear that. I said, you're not doing it again, because it was something I wasn't aware of. So they've been, and I guess the nice thing is you make a lot of good friends for life. Now, once in a while, there's, somebody who's in the booster club that works awfully hard and thinks their son should play, and I tell them every year, I said, don't be here for that reason. That's a coaching decision. I said, don't ever ask me why your son's not playing, because I'll have to tell you somebody's better than he is, and you're going to be embarrassed, you're going to feel bad, I'm going to be embarrassed, and I don't want to operate that. I want us to be able to look each other in the face years from now and be friends. So it's worked, I think, really successful.
Wally, down at the Warren tournament last year, or last December, they had between games, they had the kids had three-point shooting and things like that. I mean, I've never seen that before. That's legal? Is it to do that? The players that were playing in the games, they had three-point shooting.
First of all, keep in mind that's Pennsylvania.
Right.
In Pennsylvania, I can go and get a soccer player to come in and kick my extra points, and never has to practice with me, as long as he can. In New York State, that's completely illegal. So there are different rules. Maybe down there, they can do that.
If a team from New York State competed in things down there like that, how would that affect them?
Well, the state has become very liberal. A couple years ago, they passed a rule that you can be on any athletic team and go out and be on another one at the same time. You can be on an AAU team, you can be on a church league team. So they really broadened that. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Justin Miller, he sprained his ankle
Yeah.
last week in AAU tryout up in Buffalo. He played for Southwest.
Yeah, I understand the coach wasn't jumping for joy.
Well, can you do a little bit of a where are they now with some of the players over the last several years,
Well,
as memory brings it?
it depends on how far you go back. I mentioned the two Davis boys. Mark Hilt was one of our great players. He went out to Emporia. Pretty much a full scholarship. Mark, they loved him out there. He loved the community. Went to police school and became a policeman out there, married a gal from Emporia. Of course, Sean Bowman went from Merced to New Mexico State, was in Baltimore. My daughter went to law school in Baltimore, and he was working for the state prison system there, and he's still lifting, and he would lift with Glover, the center from the Lions, lived there, and they were in the same lifting group. Now, Sean was able to get a transfer, and he's in West Virginia, still working for, a prison system. Randy Ordinas, of course. Randy started at Kent State. He had a full ride there. He didn't like it. He went to Hobart. And today, Randy's very successful in the world of economics here in Jamestown. I think he's on several of the foundation, the board of trustees, and he's always been a great Red Raider. We have Mark Thorpe, who works over here for Sloan Malhewish, and doing very well. Sam Restivo, who we sent to Florida State, has always been a pet project of mine, because if you know Sam, you just love him to death. And for a long time, he did some of this, did some of that. Seemed like every time he got a job, I was making a call for him. And finally, his last one, he said, I want to be a counselor. So doggone if he didn't go to St. Bonaventure, now he's finished his counseling degree, and we've hired him as a 2/5 counselor at Jefferson. And I'm certain within the next year or so, Sam will get a full-time job. So if you have any influence with board members, tell them to hire Sam Restivo. I said, this is a good young man. That's, the big gentle giant, and affects our kids in a great way. Van Tane was our quarterback. Van is working as a salesman for a drug company, a drug company like Pfizer or someone like that. Dave Manella is down here with Standard Register. We kind of twisted David's arm. He coached our 9th grade basketball team this year. Did a pretty nice job, and he's been very successful. Jackie Manella works in construction. His cousin, who was quite a player for us. Now, David Curry, obviously, he's on our staff today. His brother Stevie was our quarterback. He's out in Denver, working for Coors Brewery. Paul Abbott, who was a Red Raider, is a patrolman here in town. I always get a kick out of Paul. He'll show up at Strider Field and in his uniform and struts around. I always introduce him to the kids. I said, right here's a real Red Raider. I said, today he's a patrolman in Jamestown. And so it's guys that we keep, pretty good track. Some we lose. And sometimes it takes kids. Today's different. I know when you and I got out of school, you better do it now and stop fiddling around. So day I graduated, went to college, finished, got out of the house, went on our own. Today kids will 3, 4, 5 years, they're still trying to figure out what they're going to be when they grow up. And it seems to work for them, better than, I know my daughter got out of Geneseo, and I said, take a teaching degree. I don't want to be a teacher. Fine. She finished there, took a job with quality in the office. Worked there about 1.5 years. She said, Dad, I think I want to go back and get a teaching degree. She said, now don't say I told you so. I said, fine, go ahead. And today she married a young man from Regal Lumber, Timmy Black, and she's teaching in Faulkner. So. Oh, it's a snap. You ought to try it sometime, Sam.
What do you contact the scouts?
Jamestown being the largest school in Western New York, I'll have 100 schools come through. I had a young man the other day came in, some scouting combine wanted $50 from him so that they could publicize his name. He said, what do you think? I said, throw it away. You're wasting your money. He said, I've never had a player that's been overlooked. I said, too many people come through.
On their own.
Oh, my God, yes. The coaches, the college coaches, that's their tour of duty.
How did they get that basketball thing they had this summer? Who paid for that?
The Resource Center. You mean that...
that one they went away, remember?
The Gus Macker tournament? Or are you talking about the one Maceo plays in that?
Yeah, he went to Las Vegas and then
That I don't know, and I'm not sure I want. Is it legal?
no, I said, is that what be like, Nike or something like that?
Yeah. There's money behind the
I know,
scenes
that's
there.
what did that.
Nobody does it for nothing.
I realize that.
And
They
somebody.
took a big tag, though.
Oh yeah.
Threw 'em out back and forth and-
The New York
New
State
York,
has
hello?
pretty much cut down that. If you remember the one that Maceo played in at Sweet Home a year ago,
a year ago.
said it's not going to happen again. That was too borderline, and so New York regulates that
How do you do?
pretty well. So that one's not going to happen. But another one will pop up in its place.
What determines the size of these schools? Yeah, they're A, B, C, D classification. What determines it?
Every October, you fill out a form called the BEDS form, and BEDS, that's an acronym for something or other, but you count the kids and you send that into the state. And the state says any school from 9th, 10th, and 11th, they don't count seniors anymore because they figure they're going. If you're 1,000 or above, you're an AA school. And if you're below 1,000, I think it's to 850, you're an A, or maybe 900. Nice seeing you, Muddy. And the state
So
sets
it's total,
up.
I always thought it was figured on boys or something.
No. And that's one of the problems with the parochial schools. They'll have 500 or 600 boys, and they say, well, we should be in a C. But if you assume there's going to be that many girls, they would be in AA school. And that has been one of the problems.
You gotta count them both.
Got to count them both, even if they don't have them. So that's what we did. We always doubled their enrollment, and they weren't happy with that. So now we're under a policy called Friends and Neighbors. You can schedule them as a non-league opponent, and many schools do. We don't in Jamestown. I just think if you vote to keep them out, you shouldn't play them, but that's my opinion.
You have to spend equal amount on the boys and girls like you do salaries.
It's awfully close, Sam. The salaries have to be equalized, and really you do. I mean, if girls soccer will get the same thing as boys soccer, girls basketball, same thing as boys basketball. I never sat down to, but every 5 years we try to buy uniforms. We put our teams on a 5-year rotation. Say that uniform's going to last you for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, wherever you come, and I know this year I hurried a couple of them, looked awfully raggy, and I squeezed them after 4 years. I was able to fit it into the budget. One of the problems was when we played those 13 games in football, we had 26 games, and that was over 3 seasons into 2 years. And we just destroyed the uniforms, a year early. But I said, one nice thing about being the athletic director, we're always going to have good game shirts in football. The coaches always kid me about that.
I heard at one time there was something said about they were going to go to 5 officials in 2nd and 6th football.
They are attempting to negotiate that. And the contract is just about set. I just finished my budget, and I knew enough that I had to put in a 4% across-the-board increase. At the last thing, I don't know that they got the 5th official, but I do know that in the past I have been cutting corners a little bit. I was hiring 2 officials for modified football, and I was forced to put a 3rd one on this past year. And I was hiring 3 for JV football, and they forced me to put a 4th one on. I was sent a letter that I wasn't complying with the contract, and I knew I wasn't, and I wriggled around it for a year or 2. It's like everything else. You follow regulations,
I
and
will say that having seen officials here and officials in other areas, I think we have some pretty good officials in this area.
I do too. The football officials, I think, are without the gentleman from Larry Rogers. He's just a great interpreter. We have Roger McTavish. They run the training grounds. Our track people, I think they are, top notch. Oddly,
I'm prejudiced, Wally.
of course, but oddly enough, you know, we have to send the new people to the junior high games. That's the only place. And I had a terrible complaint the other day from Southwestern. And Jimmy Candela, you know, told the lady they had to carry her out of the gym. She was screaming, yelling, causing such a disturbance. She was coming back the next day with her husband. She was going to sue him because that lousy official, and her son got knocked down. And he said, you know, this is where we have to train the official. We can't put them on a varsity game, so you try at the lowest level. I observed the game, and I keep checking my watch. I got to see the superintendent at 2 o'clock, and you don't stiff the boss. I went to Pennsylvania the other day and watched a basketball game, and there they have what's called the bench rule, and both coaches never get off the bench. And I said to my brother-in-law, I said, I don't see, there were several controversial calls. Geez, just awful things. You know, you smash together, no call. And I said, they're not saying anything. She said, oh, if they say anything, immediately they assess them a technical foul. Second one, they're out. And he said, they're in big trouble. Those guys, and I thought, you know, this isn't so bad, because the controversial calls, because the coach wasn't up and raving and caused, that the people in the stand just, you know, and then they settled back down. And I said, you know, they might be doing the right thing there, you know, taking the coaches, because we know in basketball, coaches inflame the players and the fans. The coach, I went down last night, I worked Ripley and Clymer, and there's Buchholz, Jeff Buchholz and Jeff Wheeler, two of the finest gentlemen, coached their kids. I thought, wow, piece of cake. You know, the game was just wonderful. Did we miss calls? Of course, you always miss calls, and they miss shots, and coaches miss decisions. But I thought, you know, maybe Pennsylvania has something there. You know, I have a brand new girls basketball coach. I don't know if you know Pat Smeraldo. After the first 3 or 4 games, I called Pat and I says, Pat, tone it down. Well, what do you mean? I says, tone it down, Pat. I says, you're worrying too much about the officials and not enough about the girls on the floor. I said, I've never seen an official change his mind, so you might as well stop yelling at him. I've never had one in football says, well, now that you've talked to me, I'm going to take that holding call back. It doesn't happen. And basketball is unique. Every fan hears what you say. They're right around you. I mean, you can't imagine how many times somebody pick up the phone and say, do you know what your coach said last night? I said, well, no, but I can imagine. Well, I sat right behind him and I heard it. Well, we know that athletics, it's competitive, and I don't think as a coach you're proud of it, certainly. I'm not. I have a fiery temper, and, you know, I've acted like a jackass before. My wife tells me that very quickly. You just try to, I guess as you get a little bit older, you calm yourself, or try to. But I think we have a nice thing going. We let senior citizens in for nothing in Jamestown. And boy, we get a lot of senior citizens that back us. And they not only, you have a residual benefit. They not only back you in the gym and Strider Field, but when you have an educational problem, they're there giving you input, and they're backing you there also. So I think our senior citizens have been very strong in Jamestown in regards to our athletic programs, and that's been good leadership there.
Well, you provided great leadership for the team for an awful lot of years, and I'm thrilled that you came here today. And obviously, we normally have people, a lot of them leave at 1:30. They've obviously stayed here because you've entertained them, and you've been very insightful. And so thank you for coming.
Well, I thank you.